Hi, good morning. Rudy, can you hear me? Just testing my mic.
Can.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. We'll start in a short while. Okay. Okay, good morning, everyone. I hope you all can hear me clearly.
Yes, clear, Prof.
Okay. Okay, morning. Yeah, I think we shall start our session now. It is 9 o'clock. Okay. Once again, I want to say thank you, all of you, for attending this webinar on the ventilation improvement in the workplace. Okay. The main aim of this webinar is to introduce to you all the SOP for ventilation improvement in the workplace in Sarawak. Okay, at the end of this session, we hope that you all have an idea of how to improve the ventilation in the workplaces all over Sarawak, especially for the practitioners, public health specialists who are practicing in the field, so that you know how to advise the business owner or employer on how to improve the ventilation in the effort to combat this COVID-19 transmission. So this morning we will have two speakers, myself, Angslem. I'm an occupational physician and also a public health physician. And together with me, we have IR Widianto. He is a mechanical engineer, a very experienced mechanical engineer, especially in the field of air conditioning and ventilation systems. Okay, so I will be talking about airborne transmissions, and followed by the principles of mechanical ventilation by Widianto. After that, I will explain to you all on the principles of this SOP for ventilation in the workplace. And finally, we will talk about the selection of air cleaning and. Okay. So before I start, there are just a few housekeeping matters. For Unimas staff, I'm sorry that this morning QR system have some problem. So I have created a Google form. So please fill in your names and particulars in the link that I posted in the chat box just now. And the second one is the slides. We have uploaded the slides in the Google form, so you can access the slides through the link in the chat box as well. Okay. And finally, for those who just attend join this webinar, please mute your mic. Okay. So with that, I will start the seminar in a short while. I'll stop the sharing first. Okay. Morning, everybody. So I will start my presentation. The first presentation is related to airborne transmissions of infective agent, and I will be focusing mainly on the evidence of airborne transmission for COVID-19 pandemic. Now, we all know that the disease can be generally divided into communicable diseases and non-communicable diseases. Okay, communicable diseases are referring to the diseases caused by infective agents like bacteria, viruses, etc. Non-communicable diseases are mainly due to genetic, lifestyle, and other environmental factors. So today we are focusing on the transfer of diseases caused by infective agents. Okay, in order for communicable disease to transmit, okay, basically you need 4 important factors. The first is the presence of infective agents, okay, and you must have a host that hosting this infective agent, and you also must have a recipient who are receiving this infective agent. Okay, so between the host and recipient, transmission will occur. So these all 4 factors will affect the we decide on the presence transmission of the communicable disease. Now, out of these 4 factors, the transmission is the one which is very complex most of the time, and it involves a lot of biological, environmental, behavioral factors in play that can affect how a disease can transmit from a host to a recipient. So, in terms of mode of transmission, a lot of you know that traditionally we divide the mode of transmission into a direct transmission or indirect transmission. Now, when we talk about direct transmission, it means direct contact or the spread through droplets when 2 persons come near to each other. Indirect transmission, traditionally we learn about airborne transmission, vehicle-borne, or vector-borne, depends on the mode of the indirect transmission. We can also view the transmission of disease from the aspect of transfer of infective agent, how this infective agent transfer from one person to another. Okay, you can view it from the transfer from either animate or inanimate object. I will talk about this. This is mainly the direct contact or indirect contact. Okay. Now, then you can also view the transfer of infective agent in terms of transferring through the air. And this is where
Prof, I think you got disconnected just now.
yes. Sorry. You all can hear me now. Suddenly
Yeah.
got disconnected. Yes. I resume now. Okay. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. Now, when we talk about transfer through the air, we have droplet spreads or airborne spreads. Okay, a lot of people use airborne spread, but for me, I would prefer to use aerosol spread as opposed to airborne. Aerosol spread as opposed to droplet spread. Okay. Now, When we talk about airborne transmission, then the dispersion range of the particle becomes very important. How far a particle can transfer through air depends on the size of the particles. If you look at this, the different sizes of a particle, the bigger the size, right, the shorter the range of dispersion, and this is where the transmission is more likely to be droplet. The droplet have a bigger size, and hence the range of transmission is shorter. And when you have a particle which is less than 10 micron, okay, it is more likely in the area of the aerosol transmission because this aerosol can suspend in the air and spread beyond the room. Okay. Now, on the other hand, when we look at the particle size, we also consider the capability of that particle to penetrate into our respiratory system. Typically, those particles which is less than 100 micron to down to about 10 micron, they are in the range of the droplet transmission, and they are inhalable and usually stop at the upper respiratory tract. And those particles which is less than 10 micron can penetrate deep into the thoracic system, and sometimes we call it a thoracic particle and also respiratory particle, depends on the size of the particles. If you look at this diagram, right, those thoracic particles, those particles less than 10 micron can penetrate down into our trachea, bronchus, and down into the alveoli. Typically, for particulate matter less than 2.5 micron, right, it can actually penetrate into the alveoli system, and this is where the lower respiratory tract infection occur. Okay. So, how big is the our COVID-19 virus, coronavirus? If you look at this coronavirus, it's 0.1 to 0.5 micron. Bacteria is typically 1 to 3 micron, and respiratory droplet is around 5 to 10 micron, and this is where those below 10 micron can go into the lower respiratory tract. So why the size matter? Because as I mentioned to you, we need to differentiate between droplet transmission and aerosol transmission. And again, why do we need to differentiate between droplet and aerosol transmission? It is mainly because of the characteristic. As you know, droplet transmission is likely to spread from face to face, and the spread is usually limited by gravity, and it can cause object contamination or surface contamination. Usually the spread is confined within space, and they are usually trapped at the upper respiratory tract. We call it as an inhalable particle. As opposed to aerosol transmission, the aerosol can suspend in the air. It spreads by air current, and the spread can go beyond the room. And usually they are at the range of thoracic to respirable particles. And these two characteristics, the distinction between these two characteristics is important in terms of control measure. When we are having a disease caused mainly by the droplet transmission, social distancing, personal hygiene, surface decontamination, and personal protective equipment, these become very important, particularly the social distancing. However, if the disease is caused by aerosol, which can be suspended in the air and spread by air currents, then the social distancing might not be effective anymore. And this is where the ventilation control become very important, because you need to channel the contaminated air to somewhere else, rather than confine it in the confined space. So at the beginning, we know that SARS-CoV-2 could be spread through a droplet, and based on the previous experience during the SARS in 2003, of which the transmission is mainly through droplets. We initially thought that SARS-CoV-2 is also transferred through droplet spreads. Okay, and apart from these droplet spreads, we had direct contact, of course, and also indirect contact. But over the past 1 to 2, almost 2 years, right now we know that COVID-19 is not only transferred through droplet, but also through aerosol spreads. Okay, the fact that despite social distancing, a lot of non-pharmaceutical intervention in place, the cases of the COVID-19 worldwide keep on increasing. That already give you an idea of the aerosol transmission of this pandemic. So now the main aim of this lecture is look at some evidences on the airborne transmission for this COVID-19. So in order for what we call airborne transmission to occur, you need to fulfill these 5 criteria. Number 1, the virus must present in the respiratory system. Number 2, the respiratory activities or mouth activities should produce the aerosol, and the aerosol must contain these viruses. Okay, and not only that, the viruses must remain viable in the aerosol for some time in order to be effectively infecting the other person. And then finally, the viruses, once it's in contact with the recipient, the viruses can bind and enter the recipient respiratory system. Now, you have to fulfill all these 5 criteria in order for airborne transmission to occur. So let us look at all these evidence supporting this condition. Number 1, there are a lot of studies have been done, but this is one of the studies that I show here, right? The study, the ex vivo experimental study show viral tropism and the viral affinity of this SARS-CoV-2 in the ciliated globular clump and basal cells of bronchus and epithelial cells or lung parenchyma. Okay, and that is the evidence of the presence of the viruses in our respiratory system of the infected person. Number 2, we know that breathing, talking, and coughing can release droplets and aerosol. Okay, that may contain viruses. But do you know how much aerosols are generated during normal daily mouth activities? Studies have shown that even when you breathe normally, right, you can generate the aerosols in small amount. Okay, and typically when you talk loudly, like when you talk by opening up the mouth, the aerosol generated is even higher. Okay, and among these different types of the droplets or aerosol generated, okay, the range of droplet that is generated is mainly below 0.8 micron. Okay, and that is in the range of aerosol. So which means that when you talk or when you breathe, okay, although you do not see the droplets are coming out from your respiratory systems, right? You can actually generate these small sizes of aerosol which is floating around in the air, and this is very important. Okay, and this is one of the important factors that can cause the transmission of the disease. Okay, now the viruses that's so-called floating in the air are actually not floating naked. No? It's actually contained in the respiratory droplets. And we know that the bigger droplets will be dropped by gravity, especially for those more than 10 micron. And the smaller one, it will suspend in the air. And sometimes the bigger droplets, it might go through evaporation and become smaller and hence suspend in the air. And the air suspension can also be caused by the resuspension of the droplet on the surface. For instance, if you have contaminated the surface, but somehow you hit on the surface and this droplet will get resuspended in the air. So these are all different factors that cause suspension of the droplets in the air. And this SARS-CoV-2 virus is contained in this smaller droplet which is in the air. It is already evidenced by a lot of studies showing that the SARS-CoV genetic material has been detected in throat swabs, anal swabs, blood, sputum, feces, and the urine of the infected cases. Okay. Then the next issue is how long can these viruses remain viable in the aerosols? Okay. Studies have shown that the half-life of the viruses in the aerosol is about 1.1 hour, and some viruses can survive actually more than 3 hours. If you look at these different medium of which this virus can survive, right? Aerosols can go more than 3 hours. If you have droplets on the surface of the copper, right, it can go up to around 8 hours. Cardboards can last for up to 24 hours, right? Stainless steel up to 24 hours, and plastic up to 48 to 72 hours. Okay, so these are the evidence showing that this SARS-CoV-2 virus is remain viable in the surface for certain period of time. Now, other studies have shown that this SARS-CoV-2 remain viable in the aerosol for at least 1.5 hours under experimental conditions. Okay, and we also have study showing the respirable size aerosol can contain viable SARS-CoV-2 viruses for up to 16 hours as well. Okay. So all these studies shows that SARS-CoV-2 could survive in aerosol for a relative long period of time under favorable condition and potentially spread through the air currents. And not only that, we have a real-life analysis of outbreaks that can support these findings. For instance, you have this very early paper published last year. This is aerodynamic analysis of SARS-CoV-2 in 2 Wuhan hospitals. This is the very famous paper. And what happened is that they collected the total suspension particles in the air of the different area in the hospital. And they found out that although the patients are actually confined in the patient's area like intensive care unit or workstation at the different zone, but the viruses is also found in the medical staff area as well as the public area. Okay, so this is one of the evidence that the air that contain the viruses, the aerosols that contain the viruses move from one place to another place through the air currents. We also have another study showing the presence of the viruses in the different types of air samples in the hospital. For instance, bedroom air samples, hallway air samples, they detected the virus, as opposed to a personal air sampler which have a high content of the viruses as well. Okay, and this study itself, right, shows that even up to day number 8, right, when they culture the air samples, the viruses are still viable. This is the evidence of cytopathic effect of the cell culture. And up to day 8 also, you can still see immunofluorescence staining positive for the viruses. Okay, and they even go for the electron microscope and see that the nucleic acid is still intact for the detected viruses. Okay. Now, this is another study done in Singapore, showing that the air sample, they also collect the air samples, and they found that there's a positive RNA copies in the air sample of the infected patients at a different period of time. And one of the interesting finding here is that when you have the lower viral load, right, the air sample is free from the RNA particles. But if you have a higher viral load, then there's more chance for you to detect this positive virus in the air samples. Okay. And not only that, they found out the air sample, I mean the viruses were also found positive, okay, at the air exhaust fan. And this is one of the evidence showing that the aerosols that contain the viruses is actually brought through air currents, because it trapped on the exhaust fan ventilation surface. So finally, study have shown that in our human body, we have what we call alveolar type 2 cells, and also in the respiratory tract that express a lot of angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptor. Now, this is the receptor of which the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein bind to, and this and this is where these SARS-CoV viruses will gain entry into our human body. Okay, so now if you look at the biological plausibility of aerosol transmission, first, the virus containing aerosols are generated by or from an infected human. We have evidence on that. We also have evidence that the viruses remain viable and effective in the aerosol for some period of time. And then finally, there is evidence saying that the target tissue where the virus initiate the infection are accessible to aerosol with enough load. So all these fulfill the conditions for the airborne transmission. So in summary, I want to recap here. Right, in order for a disease airborne transmission to occur, first the virus must present in the respiratory system. Number two, the respiratory mouth activity should produce the aerosol, and the viruses should contain in the aerosol, and these viruses should remain viable in the aerosol for some time. And finally, the viruses can bind and enter the recipient's respiratory systems. Okay, so and also study have shown that the higher the load of the viruses, right, the more severe the disease it is. Okay, and this is proven by a lot of cohort studies and experimental study as well. So how to overcome this aerosol transmission? Okay, first, social distancing, as you all know of. Number two is to wear the mask. Now, the purpose of wearing a mask in the general population is mainly for the source prevention. It's not really for the protection of, although it can also offer some form of protection, but the main purpose is for the source prevention, to reduce the number of aerosol generated by the infected persons. And number three, of course, we have surface decontamination and personal hygiene. And finally, what we need to do is for the ventilation. And this is why we are here today, to talk about how we can improve the ventilation in a confined space. Of course, not only that, the vaccination is very important methods to improve the immunity of our body to fight against this SARS-CoV-2. Okay, so actually we have a lot of guidelines in terms of the improvement of the ventilation, indoor ventilation. First, we have this guidance notes developed by DOSH. They have different settings, guidance of ventilation on the different settings. Okay, you can refer to this DOSH website. And we also have industrial code of practice of indoor air quality. Okay, now Ministry of Health have come out with guidelines of ventilation in healthcare setting. If you look at this guideline, this is very stringent guideline, Okay? And this is applicable only for the healthcare setting, not for the general workplaces, because the requirement is much higher as compared to the general workplaces. Okay, so in terms of healthcare setting, you all can refer to this guideline. And we have a WHO guideline of good indoor ventilation and so on. And we have CDC guideline, US guideline, Australia guideline as well. But all of these guidelines, they have a lot of information there, and it's very difficult to be absorbed and to be digested by the business owner. And this is why in Sarawak we have come up with a standard operating procedure for workplace ventilation improvement, which is simplified and more practical and easy to be followed by the general population. Okay, so I will be talking about this SOP later. So with this kind of airborne transmission introductions, we will move on to the next lecture on the principles of mechanical ventilation, which will be given by IR Rudy. Okay, thank you.
Okay, hold on. Let me share my screen. Can I confirm whether am I audible and also the screen is visible?
Yes, very clear.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Prof. Ansem. Basically, for this morning, Assalamualaikum and good morning. For the next part of the session, we are going to look into some introduction, not really deep technical principles of mechanical ventilation, but just merely an introduction on mechanical ventilation in buildings. But before we proceed to some introductions, some details and technical aspect of the mechanical ventilation, let us look into some possible case study or some plausible droplet transmission or aerosol transmission due to the ventilation and air conditioning system in a building. Okay, for example, for the first case that we have here is that this is quite a famous study and have been presented a few times, quite a lot basically in a few talks, seminar and so on. Whenever that people talking about airborne transmission of COVID-19, this is one of the famous case study that they will quote. So in one restaurant, this is in Guangzhou, one restaurant, the evidence saying that the transmission of the COVID-19 was consistent with the direction of the airflow of the air conditioning system. If you look into the diagram above here, you can see that if you compare with the diagram at the bottom, you can see that those who are in the red circle, those who are actually positive in COVID, detected positive. So the first person who are detected positive was sitting at A1 here. So if you look into the air conditioning air movement in the room, because this is actually a split unit air conditioning system, the air is moving towards C to B and then back to C again. So this is how the air circulate within that space. And the spread of the virus or the spread of the infection, you can see that it is consistent with the movement of air back and forth along the way. So this is one evidence. And then there is another evidence also in this is also in Guangzhou, where the aerosol transmission happened in the departmental store in a hypermarket or shopping complex. So what happened here was that they suspect that 3 index case was actually being transmitted among each other through aerosol transmission. So case 1, 2, and 3, so basically are transmitted through aerosol. All of 3 of them are female, and then from these 3 index case, they transmitted to other people, those who are customers and also close contact and even salesperson in that departmental store. Okay, from 3 you can see that it can spread. Okay, and then another example is that there is one case where this is in Seoul, Korea. Okay, it is in an apartment where the apartment is sharing a common ventilation stack, and within the same line or within the same vertical line of the ventilation stack, they detected that you can see there are line A and line B here, and if you look into this diagram, you can see that the infection are consistent with the vertical line of the common stack itself. So it could be the evidence of the possible transmission of COVID-19 through the air duct itself. Okay, and also in our SOP later, there is one area or there is one elements related to the flushing, related to the air seal and so on. So this is an example that COVID-19 could possibly transmit through toilet or through the ventilation stack of our wastewater line. And this is also happened in China, but it was not stated exactly where the exact location is. So what happened here is that all of the transmission are actually all of the spread was detected from those who are actually sharing a vertical ventilation stack for their toilets and bathroom. So this is similar to the case in the South Korea, but this is also happening in China. So there are about 9 infected patients in 3 families. They are all staying in the same vertical line, sharing the same stack, ventilation stack of their water closet. Okay, before we move on to principle of ventilation, let us look into the concept of air or some terms that normally used when we talk about air supply, air exhaust or ventilation in a room. We have what we call as infiltration. If we imagine that this box is a room or this box is a space and it is actually consisting of 2 separate spaces. Maybe it is separated by a partition, door, windows, and so on. So if we have what we call as infiltration, this is what we define as some kind of air leakage from outside of the space or outside of the building. It leaked maybe through some opening under the door, through leakage of the crack in the wall, minor opening of the window, improper sealing, and so on. And then in between of the spaces, we have what we call as transfer air, from one space to another. The air within the similar, major space, even though they are separated by partition, there might be some, transfer air. So this transfer air is the transfer of air in between spaces within the same building. And we have exfiltration. The term exfiltration is actually the leakage of air. In contrast to infiltration, exfiltration is basically the leakage of air from inside the building to the outside environment. And within the air handling unit, we have normally the air handling unit will supply the fresh air, will supply the cool air, and also in some cases the air handling unit will do the exhaust of certain air to make sure that the air inside the building either diluted or being exchanged with a good air quality. So normally in common building, the air handling unit is actually the one who is doing the mechanical ventilation or forced ventilation. Okay. And then this are some definition. You can have a look into it later as what I explained previous in the previous diagram. Okay. So basically, everything that we do will have their purpose. So for ventilation in the building, for example, if we can imagine that on our lung, if we try not to breathe in any air from outside, it is quite impossible. It is basically impossible. We will actually suffocate, and then eventually we will lose our life. So that is what happened in our building. We need to basically introduce fresh air so that as just like our body, our cells require oxygen. So imagine that a building, within the building, the cells is actually us, human, as the cells of our body. So the building is the body and the cell are us. So we need oxygen. Therefore, ventilation is very important in a building, and introducing fresh air into the building is very important so that we can have the supply of oxygen continuously so that we can breathe, so that the building itself can breathe. Okay, so just like a lung, we need to bring in fresh air and remove dirty air out of the building. As we breathe, we actually produce carbon dioxide, and then we need to remove that carbon dioxide from the building. In some cases, okay, there are also pollutants being generated inside the building. So we need to remove that pollutant as well out of the building, either by dilution or by replacing the air. Okay, so typically in a common building setup, particularly here in Malaysia, there are two types of typical heating, ventilating, and air conditioning systems. HVAC, normally we call it just aircon system. They are either centralized system or decentralized system. Both have their reason why they are being installed. For centralized system, normally both of the selection of the system normally being selected first is based on the purpose of the building. Secondly, could be due to the economical consideration, because in some cases for very big building, it is more economical for us to install centralized system, while for certain size of building, it is more economical for us to install a decentralized system. There are a few considerations by the design engineer when they are selecting the system that they're going to install in certain buildings. But there are pro and con, there are benefits and disadvantage of each of the system. For example, for centralized system, most of the time, normally, we will have fresh air intake into the building. And typically, to identify the fresh air, the centralized system, we normally identify it with within the building. We can see there are a lot of ductings and so on. Normally, it could be a centralized system, but there are also some decentralized system comes with a ducting system. So there are a few ways for us to look into it. Later, I'll explain in details on how do we identify each of the system. And then commonly for centralized system, we can identify it is a centralized system by looking whether or not the system being installed with a air handling unit, or normally we call it AHU. If we find an AHU room in that building, then most likely that the system is a centralized system. So for decentralized system, of course, the air is actually being recirculated within the same space or room, and hence it is without any fresh air intake on its own. So the system does not provide any fresh air intake. And then typically we can see this decentralized system being installed with dedicated indoor units for different rooms. So each room will have its own dedicated indoor unit. So this is what we call as decentralized system, or most commonly known among us as split unit. Okay, these are some examples of equipment that you can have a look into when you try to identify the system that the building have for their air conditioning system. For example, we have for centralized system commonly available in Malaysia, we have this what we call as air-cooled chill water system. It is actually a chill water system being supplied to an AHU, but the chiller is being cooled by air instead of by water from the cooling tower. So to identify this system, we can see if there is an available air-cooled chiller, the one that is on the right here. This is air-cooled chiller, an example of air-cooled chiller. And then most of the time it will be coupled with AHU, but unfortunately, AHU is not visible to the public, but air-cooled chiller normally that is visible to the public. So AHU only visible to those who are authorized to maintain, operate, and those who are authorized to enter the AHU room itself. Okay, while the second system that we have commonly for centralized system is the water cool chill water system, where this system is being cooled by chill water from a chiller, which is the chiller being cooled by the cooling tower. Okay, the condensate water from condensate water is coming from cooling tower instead of from the air. Okay. So for this case, it is commonly available with cooling tower. This is the one that is normally visible to the public. You can see if there is a cooling tower, most likely it is a water cool chill water system. And again, it is coupled with ASU, but ASU is most of the time will not be visible to the public. Okay, and we have air cool package, which is less common here in Malaysia, where most of the time, in some cases, it is actually being installed on the top of the roof, or in some cases, we call it as a rooftop package. It is just like an outdoor unit, but basically there are outdoor and indoor. There are condenser coil and evaporator coil within the same unit, and the cool air is being supplied in that unit with ducting system itself. And when we have air cool package, of course, we have what we call as the water cool package. This is very old system, and being less and less used nowadays. We can see that for water cool package, we just have a similar concept as the air cool package, but instead of getting the cooling action from the air for the condenser, we get the cooling action from the cooling tower. Normally, it is being identified, easily identified with cooling tower. So there are similarities of equipment that are available to the public view of a building for water cool package and water cool chill water system. Okay, and this is a common aircon system that we have around us. For decentralized system, we have something what we call as the single split, where we have one outdoor and one indoor. We have multi-split system, one outdoor and multiple indoors. And also, even though this is a very old technology, very old unit, but there are also new products coming out for window units, where you just have to retrofit your windows and then install the window unit. This is considered a split unit or considered as decentralized system. And also getting more and more popular nowadays, which is the portable air conditioning system. But this is not meant to cool the room. Portable air conditioner, most of the manufacturer will claim that the portable air conditioner is meant for spot cooling. So if you are sitting in one spot, so that aircon is just meant to cool yourself only, or your surrounding, not the whole room. Okay, and getting more and more popular nowadays is variable refrigerant flow or variable refrigerant volume, where this system could be confused with air cool chill water system, where we have a lot of this outdoor unit being connected to multiple indoor unit. So basically, this is a decentralized system because the system employ individual indoor unit for each room. Okay, as what I say just now, we can actually easily identify typical hatchback system. For centralized system, we can look for, if possible, bilik ASU or ASU room, looking for ducting system, cooling tower, air cool chiller, and so on. Okay. And then for decentralized system or split unit, it is easily identified with this kind of outdoor unit, indoor unit. In some cases, most of us might, mistaken the aircon in the hotel could be a centralized system. It is actually somehow very confusing because they have a very, very big cooling tower, but eventually that system is considered as decentralized because they are actually employing water cool split unit system. So they have this one fan coil unit inside here, being actually supplying for individual room. That's why if you can see most of hotel, you can see that even though you think that they are using centralized system, you can see that there is a temperature controller in each room. So whenever there is a temperature controller in that dedicated room, most likely the system is actually a decentralized system or split unit. So basically, you can identify if you have a lot of this, split. If you have a lot of this outdoor unit, definitely it is a split system or decentralized system. Okay, so it comes to ventilation strategy. Normally, typically, ventilation strategy for mechanical ventilation, there are three common or commonly practiced methodology. First one is either we go by exhaust only ventilation. So exhaust only will somehow create a negatively pressured space. With exhaust only, we draw in fresh air by actually forcing the air out first. So we force the air out, the fresh air will naturally come in from other openings other than the exhaust openings. And also we can do by supply only ventilation, meaning that we supply fresh air into the building by means of fan or by means of blower and so on, and we create a positive pressure in the space, and then we force the air inside the room out through other openings. And we can also do balanced ventilation, meaning that we supply equal amount of supply air and also exhaust out the same rate as what we supply. In some cases, we can also play around with the balanced ventilation, not to be so balanced, where we either reduce the exhaust rate or we either reduce or increase the supply rate. Okay, some illustration on the three types of ventilation or three methodology of the ventilation, where exhaust ventilation, as what I said just now, we provide the mechanical ventilation for exhaust air outlet only, and then we create a negative pressure in the space, and then eventually when there is a negative pressure, fresh air from outside will come in through any other openings. Okay, for supply ventilation only, what we have is that we supply fresh air through means of mechanical ventilation, fan, blowers, and so on. We create positive pressure inside the space, and then eventually the air inside the space will escape through other openings. And thirdly, we can actually introduce balanced ventilation. So with balanced ventilation, we can do both supply the fresh air with mechanical ventilation, and also exhaust the air with mechanical ventilation. Most of the time, balanced ventilation will create almost neutral pressure within the room. Okay, and there are two concepts. Basically, if we are to design for or if we are to install any mechanical ventilation equipment in the room, we have to consider on the behavior of the air movement inside the room. There are commonly two types of air movement within the room or within the space. The first one is what we call as displacement flow. Normally, this is normal if we install a supply air and return air, or if we basically having, regardless of any types of the ventilation techniques that we apply, either exhaust only, supply only, or balanced ventilation, as long as we have the supply and return or exhaust air is basically quite a far distance or quite opposite to each other, and and there are actually in a way that we can predict the airflow to have an almost one-way direction. Okay, from supply to the exit, then we will have what we call as displacement airflow. So displacement airflow meaning that you can see there are no mixing of air inside this room. So if there is no mixing inside of air inside the room, then it is very, very good, very desirable for us to have this kind of air movement for airborne pollutants removal. Okay, so for us in this case of webinar, we would love to have this kind of airflow for us to actually being effectively remove the aerosol transmission or aerosols contaminant inside the room. Okay, another type of flow behavior is what we call as entrainment flow. Entrainment flow is common, very, very common in our system. In fact, most of our system that we have are being designed so that we have this kind of entrainment floor. It is either because it is quite impossible for us to achieve the displacement flow because maybe the cost is too high, maybe because of the building arrangement, space, space, adjacent to the space that we are trying to create, the airflow is not suitable and so on. So most of our space that we have now is basically with entrainment flow. Particularly if we have the supply of air and the return of air is from ceiling to ceiling. So most of the time we will have this what we call as the entrainment flow. So entrainment flow will promote mixing of air within the room. So the bad thing about this is that if we don't design it properly, what will happen is that we will have a short circuiting, meaning that the supply air will most of the supply air will not circulate within the room. Eventually, in fact, it is going to go directly to the exit or return air. Return meaning that it could be exhaust, and it doesn't really contribute to the removal of the bad air inside the room itself. So we are not saying that entrainment floor is bad, but if it is badly designed, it might cause a problem in the room. So eventually, we will have a stagnant air inside the room at some point. So it eventually will promote a much worse case of contaminants, and also if in the case of aerosol transmission, the infection risk will be much higher. Okay, in a typical HVAC system with centralized air conditioning system or centralized HVAC system, we have this particular or typical components where we have this what we call as imagine that this is the room. Okay, down here is the room, and above here are the aircon system. So we have this is the ducting system, and we have the supply air diffuser, and the ASU that I showed you just now is this components. And along with the ASU, within the ASU room, we have the return air grill. This is in the room, and in some cases, in some system, they might have return air damper and exhaust air damper. And most of the time, it is a centralized system. There will be an outdoor air damper. Okay, and for a centralized system, normally we will have a very good mixing of fresh air and recirculated air inside the room. So basically, some part of the room will be supplied with fresh air, depending on the opening of the fresh air damper. In some cases, if the system is fitted with demand control ventilation, it will basically have the control of the fresh air damper by using some means like connecting to the CO2 sensor and so on to basically tell the controller to open and close or of the outdoor air damper. Okay, some air intake will be introduced into the room, and then by means of Bernoulli principles, we will have cool air. Okay, cool air going downwards, and then the warm air will go up, and then eventually the used air, which is most of the time will be the warm air after we use them, will escape or will go through the return air grill. So return air grill and then going back into the ASU. Some part of it might go to outside of the building through the exhaust air damper. Yeah, you can see that for this system, the fresh air is being introduced into the system, not entirely, but partly, just to dilute the air inside the room. And then if we have a split unit, if we have a decentralized system, typically what we have is that the air will keep on circulating within the room itself. Okay, if we don't have any other mean of introducing fresh air into the room. So basically, what will happen is that the supply air which is the cooler air from the indoor unit, will go down, and then the warm air automatically based on the buoyancy principle and also based on the Bernoulli principle will go up and then return to the indoor unit. return to the coil, being cooled again, and then the same air will actually being circulated. So if we have a normal just a dust filter inside this indoor unit, basically the air is not being treated at all. The air is just being filtered from the dust. The rest will follow through and then recirculated back in the room. So in terms of airborne transmission, this is very, very bad. Okay, that's why we have a better air quality with centralized system. So because of centralized system will have some element of outdoor air being mixed into the system and being supplied in the room. That's why we have a very good better air quality in the centralized system. How much is fresh air required for a common space in a building? Technically, if we are going to be specific, it differ from one building and one type of space to another. It is actually available in the ASHRAE 62.1 on ventilation for acceptable indoor air quality. If you wish to read that, you can follow the link, and then you can have a look into the standards that govern the ventilation rate. But during the pandemic, WHO and DOSH recommend 10 liters per second per person. We are going to go into details into that at the last part of this webinar later. Okay, there are some common techniques for us to introduce ventilation into the decentralized system. For example, for this case, you can see that there is a split unit, and then you can see that there is a diffuser up here. This diffuser is not aircon diffuser. This is basically a fresh air supply diffuser. We can do by fresh air supply system in addition to the split unit, or we can do it by exhaust system in the way that we create negative pressure and let the fresh air come in naturally, or we can do balanced ventilation as the three method that we discussed just now, and also we can just open the window and do natural ventilation. Okay, there are some common issues related to space ventilation. One is because of in some cases, when the building is approved, it is meant for another thing, and then when they do renovation, they put up partition and so on. This kind of thing will actually block the airflow inside the room, and then sometimes it is maybe meant for supermarket, then suddenly change into barbershop and so on. The air requirement is different. This is due to the change of occupancy, and also the most bad thing is that the equipment in the system is not being maintained and clean. So this is the issue that we have to ponder around on the one that can affect our ventilation quality. Okay, for control of ventilation inside the building for non-residential building that we are going to cover in that SOP is mainly going downwards from engineering controls. For those who are familiar with hierarchy of controls, we go only up to the engineering controls. That's the most that we can propose, and that's the most that we can give to the public or to the people who are going to implement it, because substitution and elimination at this point of time will be very, very huge cost to those, especially for those business operator. So this is what we're trying to do in our SOP. This is what we're trying to introduce in our SOP, going downwards and finally going to the PPE, face mask, the behavior change of the people, the new norm, and so on. Okay, and these are some strategies on ventilation improvement. Some of it have been mentioned by Prof. Ansem just now, but here I provide the links that all of you can download later for you to have the read. So we have DOSH guidance, ASHRAE recommendation, WHA recommendation, and also we have the SOP on ventilation improvement for us in Sarawak. Okay, and in the SOP later, there is one clause saying that function as per design. So it is important that for us to make sure that all of the equipment in the space or in the room, especially the HVAC and SCMV equipment, are performing at the optimum as what they are designed for, as what they are manufactured for. And most important, the equipment must be in clean condition, and the installation is being carried out accordingly, or being done properly and correctly. And the equipment is not being misused. For example, I've seen a few people using the air cleaner to actually cool themselves rather than cleaning air, because the aircon system in that room is not functioning well. Okay, and this is air flushing strategy. If you can see that for centralized aircon with exhaust damper, so with exhaust system, what we can do is that to flush the room, we can actually open the exhaust and close the return damper, so that we can actually introduce 100% fresh air. This is not for long time. This is only for maybe 1 or 2 hours, just to get rid of the contaminant air. Okay, or if the system is without exhaust damper or without exhaust system, then we have to maybe allow the opening of the outdoor air damper for a bit longer time. Okay, or maybe we can open for 2 hours, fully open, and the rest we just operate the central aircon as normal. Okay, while for just some some assistance for those who are trying to identify what are the components that I mentioned here. Okay, so normally if those who have access to ASU room, you can see that this is the ASU air handling unit, and the supply air duct is commonly the air being supplied into the room. Okay, there are a lot of configuration, but this is one example that we have. This is the supply air duct, and for this case, there are no return air damper. There are only return air duct, and this is the case where this ASU doesn't have any exhaust system. So the air is being leaked or being disposed through exfiltration, and this is the fresh air damper that you can see here. These are some typical identification of the system in the ASU system. And for air flushing, for decentralized system, what we can do is we just allow some opening if we don't have any exhaust fan and so on. If we have exhaust fan, just run the exhaust fan. If no, then we just allow some opening through windows, doors, and so on. Okay, this allow fresh air to come in. But to get better quality, we can sometimes or intermittently open the windows and doors and so on. Okay. So the key points for this part of talk is that typically the air quality is really dependent on the air conditioning system that we have. And in order for us to have a good dilution of air or exchange of air in the room, we should have the elements of ventilation, infiltration, exfiltration, and air transfer. The rate itself, the methods, the opening, the frequency, and so on. Okay, and then the ventilation effectiveness dependent highly on two things: the movement of air inside the room, and the other one is that for us to effectively remove the contaminants, we need to look into the airflow rate. Okay, airflow rate, particularly for fresh air. Okay, these are some reference. You can have a look into it later, and then I think that's it from me for this. And now I pass the session back to Prof. Ansem.
Okay, thank you, Rudy. Right, Rudy had given us a very detailed information on how mechanical ventilation works. Okay, so with that, I will continue my lecture on the SOP for ventilation improvement in the workplace. Okay, I saw some of the participants already asked a question. We welcome you all to ask a question, but we will keep all those questions at the end of the whole seminar for Q&A session. Okay, so for the time being, we continue with the seminar first. Okay, now we have started to draft this SOP since August under the request by the Sarawak Disaster Management Committee to come up with easy to follow SOP for the business owner to improve the ventilation in the workplace. Okay, the reason being the existing guidelines are difficult to be understood by the general population and difficult to follow because there are a lot of wording insights and and there are too many types of building, and they do not know what kind of building to follow which type of guidelines and so on. Okay, and hence it is very difficult to be followed by the general population. And apart from that, when you talk about guideline, usually it is served as a guidance, and when it is served as a guidance, the general population, they might not follow the guides, okay, because there's no legal implication on that. But when we develop a SOP, right, standard operation procedure, which is published under the SDMC website, then there is legal implication of which the business owner have to follow, and they have to comply to it. Okay, so that is the reason why we need a SOP. And we consider all these elements before we develop the SOP. The SOP that we are going to, that we have produced is specific. It is based on scientific evidence or established national or international standards. And this SOP also comply to existing legislation. And as Rudy had mentioned just now, we employ, if you look at the hierarchy of control from engineering control downwards, which is available and affordable to the business owner. And because it is specific and simple, this SOP is enforceable by the authorities. Okay. Now, I just want to introduce to you, this is a task force for the recommendation on the SOP for ventilation improvement. This SOP is not developed by one or two persons alone. With me, we have Rudy, and if you look at the list, we have actually 5 mechanical engineers and 2 architects, which is involved in the development of this SOP. We also have help from the Swinburne University, the 3 mechanical engineers from there. And looking at this SOP, we have a discussion, brainstorming, and finally we come out with this workable SOP. So in terms of the types of ventilation improvement methods, when we develop the SOP, we look into airflow, we look into air exchange, air filtration, germicidal methods, as well as the other IAQ factors, which can affect what kind of ventilation improvement for what kind of space. Okay, and so we come back to this SOP. The principle is to dilute the air and exchange the contaminated air with fresh air or clean air as frequently as possible. Okay, and the aim is to achieve optimal air dilution, air exchange, and air filtration in hopefully in all non-residential buildings in Sarawak. And the aim is to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission to as low as possible among the occupants. So now, one of the things that I want to point out here is that this SOP is based on space configuration. It is not based on the building typology. We have come up with a different type of space configuration. Okay, number 1, we have an enclosed building or space with centralized aircon system. So when you go to your workplace or any workplace, you have to look at the workplace in terms of a space. Is this space enclosed building or space? Is it with a centralized aircon system? The second configuration is enclosed building or space with openable window and split aircon system. Okay. Now the third one is enclosed building or space with openable window and without air conditioning system. This is the one that without air conditioning system, but window is openable. We have also enclosed building or space without window or window opening is not possible. Okay, for some of the building or office space, they have a window, but because of renovation and so on, the window opening become not possible. Okay, so this kind of environment, we consider it as an enclosed space without window. And we have a lot of building or space with wide front and back entrance openings. Okay, we also have a building or space with less than 50% perimeter wall. If you look at this, less than 50% perimeter wall is mainly like the corner shop I mean corner lot coffee shop that you see all around in the Sarawak, in the city. For this type of configuration, basically we do not have a SOP because there is natural ventilation connected to the outside the building. So we do not develop any SOP for this kind of building configuration. Then we have SOP for kitchen within the building, as well as toilet and shower room within the building. Okay. Now, like I mentioned to you, we developed the SOP according to the type of space configuration and not according to the building typology. We have done a workshop and found out that this type of different types of building configuration is actually applicable to different types of building typology based on mode of operation. And our architects have tried to match its different category of building configuration against the different types of building typology, and found out that it is actually fulfilling most of the building typology, except for the specific typology like museum, gallery, courthouse, and so on. Usually in the museum or the gallery, they have a much better ventilation system because they need to keep the archives, to preserve the archives and so on. So for that kind of building, and also like the clean room, operating theater and so on, this SOP is not applicable because their ventilation system is actually better than the other types of buildings. So this SOP have undergone this consolidation workshop. 19 August, we have participants from eateries and restaurants. We have participants from JKNS, JKR, Ministry of Local Government, different councils. Okay, and DOS as well, CIDB, Mandate, have participants from resident office, from the Ministry of Youth, Sports, and so on. Okay, so we came together one day workshop, brainstorming, and finally agreed on this SOP. Okay. We also have an engagement with the sports associations and food and beverage association, and we have actually introduced to them this SOP already. So now one of the conditions to use this SOP is that this SOP must be read together with the other latest SOP published by SDMC. This is only a ventilation improvement. As I mentioned to you in the first lecture, even though you improve the ventilation, but if you do not practice the existing droplet transmission control measures like social distancing, masking, personal hygiene, and so on, the infection will still occur. Okay, so this ventilation is mainly to overcome the aerosol transmission. Okay, so we must not also forget the still droplet transmission in place in this COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, and apart from that, for this SOP, we have to mention that whatever we put it inside is based on the ventilation rate of 10 liters per second. Okay, and also this SOP does not cover building or space which are categorized as controlled environment or clean room. For instance, like in some of the semiconductor industry, they have a controlled environment, they have a clean room, and hence this is not applicable to that kind of environment. Okay. Now you can find this SOP in SDMC website. Right, and typically the SOP is in this format. It's a very familiar format, as in all the SOP that we have for Sarawak. Okay. However, I'm going to present to you the original draft for easier discussion. Okay. Now let's go on to the first one. Enclosed building or space with centralized aircon system. Okay, now this is like a shopping mall. If you look at these shopping malls, they all have centralized aircon system. Okay, and if you look at this shopping mall inside this shopping mall, apart from the centralized aircon system, you have individual shop lot which is located inside this building. Okay, so now okay. For the SOP, for this SOP, we always have maintenance. The first part is the maintenance. In this maintenance, basically require the building management to appoint a person to be in charge of the implementation of this SOP. The reason being, when the enforcement officer go down to the field, they need to talk to one person in charge. Okay, so that's why after discussion, right, the Ministry of Local Government feel that it is important to appoint a person, suitable person to be in charge of the implementation of SOP, so that when the enforcement team come, they will know who to look for. Okay, so in terms of maintenance, the building management must perform inspection and checks on the aircon and mechanical ventilation, air conditioning and mechanical ventilation ACME system, to ensure it is functioning as per design every day before the start of business hour. So usually if they have the centralized aircon system, they will have a logbook system or checklist, so they should maintain these checks every day. And they should keep the maintenance record of the ACME systems. So this SOP, in terms of different types of building configuration, will always have this maintenance component. So maintenance component basically just talk about a person to be in charge of this implementation, as well as the maintenance, keeping the maintenance record. Okay, so we won't go into this maintenance component for the rest of the SOP. Now, the most important thing is about the air dilution and air exchange. Now, for centralized aircon system, the building owner must perform air flushing. Just now, Rudy have explained to you how to perform air flushing already. Okay, so they must perform air flushing at least once for a minimum duration of 2 hours each time every day. Okay, so the building operator must carry out this air flushing activity. How do they do that? Right, they have to perform air flushing by opening the outdoor air temper and or exhaust air temper to 100% with the aircon system still running. Okay, and if the business has a 24-hour operation, right, what they need to do is they have to perform the flushing during every shift change. Okay, every shift change for 2 hours. Now, then, as you all know, some of the system might not have air temper. So if the opening of outdoor air temper to 100% is not possible, so what they need to do is perform air flushing by opening all the windows and entrances to the building with the ACME system running. Okay, and during the daily operation, the entrances to all partition space within the building must be fully open at all times. This is the one that I mentioned to you. Within the shopping mall, you have partition shop lock within the shopping mall. So what we need them to do is, since the whole shopping mall is supplied by the centralized aircon, so this all partition shop lock should open the door. All the entrances to this all partition space should be open fully all the times, okay, to allow common air exchange within the whole the building. Okay, so this is the main part of the SOP for centralized aircon system. Now, if any of the building owners would like to further improve the air, then we have this optional additional improvement. This is not compulsory. Number one, these two components are compulsory, but the optional additional improvement is not compulsory. Okay, but it is good to do. So this is including the air filtration system. They can install air filter with minimal efficiency reporting value 13, which is MERV 13 and above to the ACME system. Okay, and if the installation of MERV 13 to the ACME system is not possible, then what they can do is, if they want to further improve the air, clean the air in the environment, they can install portable air cleaner with HEPA grade 13 and above. Okay, and how do they, what kind of air cleaner and how do they calculate? Okay, so they need the CADR, the clean air delivery rate of the portable air cleaner should be at least 4 times of the total room volume per hour. So Rudy is going to explain to you how to calculate, use this CADR to calculate and select a suitable portable air cleaner later after this lecture. And of course, the building owner can also install UVGI, ultraviolet germicidal irradiation into existing SME system. Now, the suitable UVGI is UVC, using the UVC irradiation into the SME system. Now, UVGI is not recommended to be installed in the office environment itself due to the health risk to human. Okay, however, it can be installed into the SME system. Now, I saw some of the building owner actually install the UVGI light. Okay, however, they only operate the lights at night. Okay, basically to kill the viruses in the air. So that is acceptable. You should not operate the UVGI lights when there's an occupant inside the building. Okay. So number 2 is enclosed building with openable windows and split aircon system. You can see they will have a lot of this kind of shop around the city. They have this enclosed building, however, the window can be open actually, and they install split aircon system inside this kind of building. So for this kind of building, in terms of air dilution and air exchange, they must perform air flushing 3 times before the start, midday, and prior to the closure of the business hour for a minimum of duration each time, 1 hour duration each time every day. So for premises with 24-hour business operation, again, they have to perform the flushing during every shift change. And how do they perform the air flushing? They don't have the outdoor air damper or exhaust air damper. They can perform the flushing by opening all windows and entrances to the building with the aircon system still running. Okay. And during the daily operation, the entrances to all partition space within a building, this is a partition space within the building, must be fully open at all times. Okay. And if they have an exhaust fan, the exhaust fan should be continuously in operation during the business hours. Okay, and in terms of additional improvement, what they can do here is installing the portable air cleaner or a portable air cleaner with HEPA grade H13 and above. And for this kind of building, the required CADR, a clean air delivery rate of the portable air cleaner is 6 times of the total room volume per hour. So requirement is a bit higher as compared to the centralized aircon system. Now, the third one is enclosed building or space with openable window and without air conditioning system. And you can see there are some gyms are like that. They don't have an aircon system. They open the window, they use the ceiling fan. Okay, and we have quite a number of shop lock with this kind of configurations. And now for this kind of building, they can perform air flushing again 3 times, minimum 1 hour each time per day. So when do they perform this air flushing? Before the start, midday, and prior to the closure of business hour. And how do they perform this air flushing? Is by opening all windows and entrances to the building with ceiling fan or portable fan or exhaust fan running. And when performing this air flushing using the portable fans, right? The building owner has to understand that the portable fan must face towards the windows or entrances to blow the air out of the building or space. Okay, it is not. You should not face the portable fan towards the occupant. Okay, it has to be towards the window. The aim is to blow the air out of the building or space. And during the operational hour, if they have an exhaust fan, it should be operated continuously. And during the daily operation, entrances to all partition space within the building, if they have built in some partition space within the building, should be open. Okay, and the windows of the building should also be open all the time to provide outdoor air. To supply the outdoor air. And this is provided if the outdoor air is fresh and weather is acceptable. You know that during the haze period, when the outdoor air is actually dirtier than the indoor air, then they should not do this. Okay, and so if they want to install the portable air cleaners, right, then by all means, they can install the portable air cleaner with HEPA grade H13 and above. And for this kind of building, the required CADR is also 6 times of the total room volume per hour. Now, the next one is an enclosed building or space without window or where window opening is not possible. And this is the most difficult part to manage, okay? It is regardless of whether this kind of space have a split aircon or not. As long as the window opening is not possible, then they have to follow this specific SOP. And actually, if you look at a lot of buildings in the market, right, they have an openable window, but because of renovation like this, the window become not openable. And hence, the ventilation in this kind of workplaces is poor, as compared to the one with the openable window. So what do they need to do, right? If you have this kind of building, right, you have to install both fresh air supply fan and exhaust fan on the opposite wall. Okay, and the exhaust fan must not be installed above the entrance. The reason being, if you install the exhaust fan above the entrance, when you open out the door, you actually promote the recirculation of the exhaust air into the office environment. Okay, so for this kind of building, after you have installed the fresh air supply fan and exhaust fan, you have to perform air flushing continuously throughout the operation. Air flushing is performed by opening all entrances to the building with both fresh air supply fan and exhaust fan running. And sometimes you will have enclosed space within a building, right? So if the enclosed space is within a building, the outdoor air must be introduced into the space through the building by necessary means. For example, building a ducting system. Okay, and then when the installation of fresh air supply fan and the exhaust fan are not possible due to building structure, we purposely put here not possible due to building structure. We don't want the business owner to give an excuse that it is not possible because of financial reason or because of any other convenience reason. Okay, if it is not possible due to building structure, then no choice. So what they need to do is perform air flushing by opening all entrances to the building with aircon system or fan or portable fan facing the entrance running all the times. Okay. Now, then you will have a condition of which all these improvement cannot be implemented due to the nature of business. Now, if that is the case, then the space or room cannot be used for permanent occupancy. And the following additional improvement, it becomes compulsory, must be implemented before the business activity can be carried out in that particular space or room. By right, if you do not have an openable window, right, that space or room under the building bylaws should not be used for occupants. For occupancy, you can only use that kind of room for storage purposes. So, I'm sure if you go to the ground, you will see some of the building have this kind of configuration. So if they need to use for a short-term occupancy, then they must install a portable air cleaner with HEPA grade H13 above. And for this kind of environment, the required CADR is at least 6 times of the total room per hour. Okay. So now, then we have the easier to manage space, which is a space with a wide front and back entrance opening. This one is very common for all the cafeteria in the city. Okay, now for this, it's very easy. You allow natural ventilation as usual through all windows and opening at all times. Okay, and the ceiling fan should be operated at all times. Now, you will see some of them, they have wall fans or portable fans. Now, if they have wall fans or portable fan, it should direct these fans towards the opening, not towards the customer. Okay, the wall fans and portable fans should not blow towards the occupant. It should blow towards the opening. Okay. Then the next one is a building or space with less than 50% perimeter wall, like I mentioned to you. Like this kind of building, we just allow the natural ventilation without any specific SOP. But again, when you see this kind of environment, if you want to advise the business owner, if they have the wall fan, please blow towards the entrance, not towards the customers. So the next one is kitchen within the building. Now, for kitchen within the building, they must operate exhaust fan continuously during the business hour and make sure all dampers are fully open if there is a damper for the kitchen exhaust fan. Okay, and if the exhaust fan is not available, then they must install the exhaust fan to direct airflow out of the building. Now, all windows and opening in the kitchen facing the external side of the building must be open at all times during the operation hour. This is to promote the air exchange. Okay, and if the above improvement cannot be carried out, then they must not use the kitchen. Okay, so on top of this air dilution and exchange in terms of kitchen, we also add in this sanitary system, of which they must check the water seals to prevent any leaking. And also, we encourage, we discourage the use of hand dryer. Okay, so we put here prohibit the use of hand dryer. The purpose here is to reduce the aerosol generation as much as possible. In terms of toilet and shower within the building, all the toilet or shower room within the building must have an exhaust fan. Okay, so they must operate the exhaust fan continuously during the business hours and make sure all dampers are fully open if there's any. And if the exhaust fan is not available, they must install the exhaust fan to direct the air out of the building. However, if you look at some of the sports facility, some of the shower room is not fully walled up. They have a wide upper wall opening. Now, for this kind of shower room, if it is not fully walled up and has a wide upper wall opening to the outdoor directly, then the installation of exhaust fan is not necessary. Okay, and if the above improvement cannot be used, then the toilet or shower room must not be used also. Okay, and in terms of sanitary system, they must also check water seal to prevent any leaking. We prohibit the use of hand dryer, and we would like to take this opportunity, to teach the population to close the toilet lid before they flush the toilet. Okay, this is one of the common hygienic practice that we should educate the public in order to reduce aerosol generation in the building environment. So, in addition to this SOP, IR Rudy has actually developed two simple guides on the exhaust fan selection and also portable air cleaner selections. Okay, and we have sent this SOP to SDMC as well, Ministry of Local Government. Not sure whether they put out, but we will share with you these simple guidance later. Rudy will share with you how to select the exhaust fan and how to select the portable air cleaner. Okay, in his lecture after this. So what I want to mention again here is that this SOP, in order for the business owner to implement this SOP, of course, they will incur some costs. Okay, but what we need to tell them is that the cost is very minimal. If you look at all the details, right, the cost that might incur is basically electricity only, because you have to on the aircon while still opening the window, and because of that, the energy demand on the aircon system will increase, and that will increase the electricity. But that's the most probably what they can the cost that should be bear by them. And the other one is the exhaust ventilation. By right, for all the buildings, right, if they do not have, for instance, like the toilet or kitchen, if they don't have an exhaust fan, they have to install the exhaust fan. And for the enclosed space, they have to install the supply air and also exhaust ventilations. So those are the costs, but those costs, if you look at it, is actually quite minimal. We have a lot of glass mount, window mount, exhaust ventilation, which cost less than 500 ringgit. Okay, so those are the things they might need to bear when they need to improve the ventilation in the workplace. Now we have to convince the business owner that it is the social responsibility. During this pandemic period, everybody is contributing, everybody is sacrificing. Also, what can the business owner contribute is through this social responsibility by improving the ventilation in the workplace. And it is only through the collective contribution of everybody then we can overcome this pandemic. Okay. Now, a little bit about the filter efficiency of this portable air cleaner. Now, when we talk about this portable air cleaner, basically we are referring to two types of standards in terms of filter efficiency. The first one is S-RAY 52.2. Now, inside this S-RAY 52.2 standard, they mention about MERV rating, which is minimum efficiency reporting values. Okay, and the other one is British standards 1822. And this under this British standard, they have EPA, HEPA, HEPA, and ULPA standards. Okay, so by right, if you come to the market and when they say I have a HEPA filter, it is already reached this standard. Okay, otherwise they should not use the term HEPA. So let's look at some of these standards later. Now I want to explain a little bit on the filter efficiency. Now when we say HEPA filter have a 99% efficiency in filtering the particle. What do you mean by that? It is actually filtering the particles at 0.3 micron in size. Now, 0.3 is the one that's most difficult to be filtered out because the particle which is more than 0.3, probably more than 0.4 micron, they will be filtered out through inertial impaction, okay, through inertial method in the filter. This is a filtration mechanism. And those which is less than 0.1 micron, okay, they actually diffuse inside this filter. Okay, and they will be attracted by electrostatic charge of the filter. So those less than 0.1 micron and more than 0.4 microns are easier to be filtered out. However, those in between is the one most difficult because they have to be intersect within the mesh network of the filter system. Okay, so when the HEPA filter gives a certain rating, right, it is actually at the 0.3 micron. And if you look at our viruses, naked viruses is between 0.1 to 0.5 micron. Okay, and filter, they can filter out the bacteria which is at the range of more than 1 micron, might not necessarily be able to filter out the viruses. It is very important. Okay, now if you look at the X-ray method, X-ray standard, they come out with this MERV rating from 1 up to 16. And for each of these standards, they specify the filtration efficiency at a different range, 0.3 to 1 micron, 1 to 3 micron, 3 to 110 microns, and so on. So only if you look at this rating, only up to MERV 13, right, then this filter can filter out 0.3 to 1 micron. That's why if you look at our SOP, we say if you want to install filter at the centralized aircon system, you have to at least have MERV 13, so that it can filter out the particle less than 1 micron. Okay. Now, when you look at the British standards, like I mentioned to you, they have an EPA, HEPA, and ULPA. When it comes to HEPA, which is HEPA, it is already considered as HEPA 13. And the efficiency filtering the 0.3 micron is 99.95. 99.95. So this is the HEPA grade. When we talk HEPA, it means 99.95 filtration efficiency. So if you combine this MERV rating and the HEPA rating, you notice that when you say it is HEPA, it is actually at the range of MERV 17, 18, 19, and 20. Okay, for centralized aircon, we recommend to put in this filter at MERV 13. The reason being, the higher the filter, right, the more difficult the system to be able to support the filter, because you require a lot of energy to blow the air through the systems. Okay, so when you buy the portable air cleaner, right, we recommend to use a HEPA. And when we say HEPA, it is already H13. Okay, and with the filtration efficiency of 99.95 or 97, which is 2 decimal point. Okay, so that's all from me. I think we should move on with Rudy's talk. Okay, and after that we can proceed with the discussion. Okay, thank you.
Okay, hold on. Okay, thank you, Prof. Ansem. Okay, now let us look into some guides. This is only a guide because what we have in the SOP for portable air cleaners and exhaust fan, but exhaust fan in some cases it is mandatory. Portable air cleaners in some cases they are all mandatories. But most likely for portable air cleaners, there are optional improvement in the SOP itself. But before same flow as what I did in the previous presentation. Let us look into actually I'm trying to answer Grace, Miss Grace question just now. The question sounds like whether if we have a split unit aircon and portable air cleaner, is it sufficient or not? So let us look into some evidence on the use of portable air cleaners in certain environments. For example, for this case, we have a study by this Lindsay about the combination of portable air cleaners and masks being actually used in a conference room or in a classroom and so on. But this is not really an actual study, but it is more like a simulation, a real life simulation or physical simulation. They use some kind of dummy, they use some kind of aerosol generator to mimic the generation of aerosol by the speaker itself. So in their setup, these are not real person. These are sensors and these are data measurement center. If you look into the heads here, so you can see that there are arrangement of air filters. Okay, HEPA air cleaners that they position. These are portable air cleaners. They are positioned in the room, and they found out that it is most effective if we put the air cleaners the closest to the aerosol source. So if we found that, for example, in a hospital or in a what we call an isolation ward or isolation room and so on, it is most effective if we can put if we know that someone is having is to become the aerosol source of infection, then it is most effective if we put the air cleaner near to that person or near to the source itself. And by combining, air cleaners and the use of masks, it is actually reduce the aerosol exposure to the receiver by 72%. So without using you can see that with the combination of with masks, with masks without air cleaners, it is reducing 72% of exposure to the receiver, but with air cleaner without mask, it is only giving up to 65% of reduction. So mask is doing much better because it is actually protecting the receivers. But then again, if we combine between air cleaners and masks, if we do combination of both, it can actually reduce the exposure risk up to 90%. So one evidence, probable evidence, because this is in simulation, that the probable evidence that air cleaners really works to reduce the aerosol in the room. Okay, another what they call another example in hospital ward. This is in in Australia. Okay, this is in Australia. This is the air cleaner that they are using. They are using this Samsung air cleaner, and that air cleaner is rated at 467 cubic meter per hour, which is if by looking into the hospital ward that they are putting the air cleaner in, the hospital ward is about 12.8 cubic meter, which is the volume is around 37 cubic meter. Sorry, the floor area is 12.8 square meter. The volume is 37 cubic meter. So in that room, in the hospital ward, which is being considered as among the HVAC professional, they will consider that in the hospital setting or in healthcare setting, the risk is much higher. So in healthcare setting, normally they will put up, very high requirement for HVAC system, better filter, better air change, and so on. So it's about in 1 hour, the clean air, the cleaner air cleaner itself can actually clean the air about 12 times of the room volume in 1 hour. Okay, in 1 hour. So basically, what happened is that in that room, this air cleaner for the room with 12.8 square meter of floor area, 99.9% of aerosol was cleared within 5.5 minutes only. So 12 times. But remember that this is very big air cleaner for that room, 12 times of the room. And then this air cleaner is using the HEPA filter, which is capable of 99.97% removal of the 0.3 micron particles. So basically, this is H13 HEPA filter. So these two can actually, hopefully, can help answer the question of Miss Grace just now about the use of air cleaner, whether it can actually reduce the aerosol inside the room or not. But again, there are more studies that you can have a look into it later. This is available in the handout that is in the Google Drive, and the link is available in the chat, and then we can share it later again. Okay, so basically, when we choose air cleaner, there are a lot of air cleaner out there with a lot of technology. We have plasma cluster. Some claim they have UV. Some claim they have ionizer and so on. But there are very less data or less or none of scientific data saying that the ionizer, plasma ion and so on can actually remove the intention, the element that we intend to remove in this examples or in this SOP. So we intend to remove the aerosol, and we intend to if possible, filter out the viruses or filter out the aerosol that carry the viruses. But most of the ionizer, from what we understand, the ionizer is meant to basically to make the particles in the air to lump together so that they fall down to our floor so that we can easily sweep them. So in the earlier stage of the development of the air cleaner, aircon with ionizer, that is the purpose of ionizer, which is basically to make sure that all of the particles become very heavy, and then they are not being suspended in the air so that we can easily sweep them or vacuum them and so on. So that is the purpose. But I don't see the effectiveness of that ionizer in removing the aerosol and also removing the viruses. So that the only hope that we have in the air cleaner that is proven to remove the aerosol is the H13 HEPA filter, which is the lowest grade of the HEPA filter. So how do we identify this equipment with the said HEPA filter? Either we can look into their specification, whether they specify as HEPA H13, or in most cases, they don't specify HEPA H13, but they specify that their HEPA filter can remove 99.97% of 0.3 microns particulates. Let us look into certain example. Okay, let us look into. I have a few examples here. Those are from the links that I provide. Yeah. Okay, certain example. If you look here, this is one, from Philips. Okay, from Philips, it can actually remove. I think there are some mistake here. 0.003 microns. it should be around 0.3 microns. So this is a kind of HEPA filter that we are looking for. One example, this is from Philips, 99.97 of 0.3 microns. And here one from Sharp, they're not saying what kind of HEPA filter in the specification, but if you notice that at the side of the HEPA, you can see that there is number 7 here. So we can refer to the fine print, which is HEPA is defined by Japan Electric Manufacturers Association Standard, JEM 1467, to filter out 99.97% of 0.3 micron. Okay, so this is HEPA 13 as well. Okay, and then next is if we look into okay, these are some examples that we can have a look into for that one. And then more is that we can for this thing, hold on, yeah. Another example is that sorry, I'm having a hard time to bring this down. I think it's okay. LG, if you follow this link, LG, it specify H13, and also Panasonic, they specify similar to the previous examples. Okay. Next is, what is clean air delivery rate? Okay. The term clean air delivery rate in the SOP that we specify, we do some kind of not to say modification, but we retranslate the term of clean air delivery rate in the SOP. Instead of using the initial terms from Association of Home Appliance Manufacturer, what do is that we more or less make people to understand that clean air delivery rate is basically it can be related to the air change per hour. It is basically the flow rate capacity of the air cleaner. So it is actually specified in the standard of AHAM AC 1/2006, and the rule of thumb for calculating the clean air delivery rate, or CADR, it is basically okay. So basically, I have an echo here. Can some? Okay. So basically, in AHM standard, CADR indicates the volume of filtered air that the air cleaner deliver to actually clean the air. So the higher the CADR values, the faster the air unit filter. The faster the unit filter the air out. For example, if you remember the ward case just now, the hospital ward case, it can actually filter out the air or clean the air or clean the aerosol in 5.5 minutes. 99% of that can actually be cleaned within 5.5 minutes with the air cleaner of 12 times bigger than the room size. 12 times bigger, meaning that 12 times capability of removing the air or filtering the air in 1 hour. Okay, so initially, the rule of thumb to basically calculate the CADR by AHAM, Association of Home Appliance Manufacturers, they use rule of thumb of 2/3 of the room area. For example, if we have the room area of maybe 10 square feet, so the CADR is around 6.5 or something like that. So 2/3 of the square of the room area, and then multiply, and that room area is converted into the flow rate in cubic feet per minute. But that one is only applicable up to the ceiling height of 8 feet. So 8 feet for normal room, for normal household condition, household setup, we might have about 8 feet. Yeah, about 8 feet. But for offices, definitely our ceiling height is much higher, maybe up to 2.83 meters and so on. So it's no longer 8 feet. 8 feet is about 2.4 meter, 2.4 to 2.5 meter only. So we decided that the CADR, instead of using that terms, it doesn't really differ much. We still want the flow rate. instead of using that kind of calculation, we try to follow the standard or X-ray standard. In the SOP, what do we do is that we specify in terms of the volume of air replacement in the room or space per hour. So we use the old term of X-ray air change per hour. In the new standard of X-ray, they are no longer specifying air change per hour due to the because we are moving towards energy efficiency of the HVAC system, and the IAQ is now tied into the energy efficiency. So we are no longer using the words of air change per hour in the guideline and standard and so on. And for this SOP, we can only provide the guideline. The calculation that we are going to provide is limited to the ceiling height of up to 4 meters. Okay. The reason is that in some cases, in most studies and so on, related to the COVID infection, a lot of places with very high ceiling, they show a very minimum risk of airborne or aerosol infection. And most of the cases related to the high ceiling places are transmitted through droplets or transmitted through close contact and so on. We cannot really advise, particularly on those places with very high ceiling. So places with very high ceiling, they either have the options to follow other part of the SOP where there are necessary to implement, or if they still insist want to use the air cleaners, they can get they can get advice from professionals or those who are supplying the air cleaners and so on. So in this SOP, to make it clear that our recommendation is based on the ceiling height up to 4 meters. Okay, these are simple example or simple flow on how do we determine the required CADR. First, we need to determine the floor area, and then we need, after that, we determine the ceiling height. Then after we have the ceiling height, with the floor area and ceiling height, we have the space volume. And then from that space volume, then we know how much volume is needed by looking into the SOP. And then from there, we have the amount of CADR. So don't worry, I'm going to use the document in details after this to show you how do we calculate with examples. And then after that, once we have the CADR, bring that CADR to our to the air cleaner retailer for selection of suitable air cleaner. Okay, let us look into how do we really calculate this. Okay, you can actually download the guide from this link. Okay, I have the, hold on, yeah. Okay, let us look into how do we from the guide. So what do we do is, first step, we determine the floor area of the room. So let's say, for example, if we have a room or a space with a width of 4 meter and length of 5 meter. So floor area is around 20 square meter. So easily calculated. If it is a square, then it is easily calculated 20 meter square. So if it is actually an odd shape, then we have to use some of our knowledge in mathematics, or we just simply do some rough estimation for the floor area. And then from that floor area, the second step, we need is that we need to determine the room volume or the space volume. So to determine the space volume, it is just simply find out the the height of the building, and then multiply it with the floor area. So space multiplied by the area multiplied by height, we get volume. So area 20 square meter multiplied by height of the space, which is 3 meter here, then we get the room volume of 60 cubic meter. Okay, so 60 cubic meter is the room volume. Then the next thing is that we refer back to the SOP. Okay, so refer back to the SOP. What is the recommended CADR in terms of air change, or in terms of how many times of the room volume is recommended for that specific type of space. So let's say, for example, our room here is actually, if you look into the arrangement, we can say that maybe This is enclosed room. Okay, let's say it is enclosed room with openable window and split unit. So let's say we have split unit here, openable window, openable door. So enclosed room with openable window and split unit aircon system. CADR per hour in the SOP is recommended at 6 times of the room volume. So this room volume, what do we do is that in this step, that room volume, okay, we multiply by 6. Okay, this is for the case of 6 times. Okay, 6 times because of the enclosed room with openable window and split unit aircon. Okay, so CADR in per hour, okay, in per hour, in volume per hour is 60 of the volume, 60 cubic meter multiplied by 6. So now we have the CADR in term of cubic meter per hour as 360 cubic meter per hour for this case, for that room just now. And then what do we need to do is that next, we can either bring this value straight away to the retailer, or we can do some conversion so that we can make the retailer life slightly easier lah. What you can do is that normally the air volume or CADR specified in the catalog most of the time is in term of liter per second, in term of cubic feet per minute. These are some guide of conversion. So let's say, for example, if we want to convert this 360 cubic meter per hour into liter per second, what do we do is that we just divide 360 cubic meter per hour, 360 cubic meter per hour here, divided by 3.6. So basically, we need 100 liter per second air cleaner. Okay, so we need a air cleaner with a minimum of 100 liter per second for this case. And then we can also use cubic feet per minute. If, let's say, for example, if we want more options to look into the air cleaner later, so we can actually also convert to cubic feet per minute. This is just to help the retailer to look faster, so that when you bring the value, they don't have to recalculate. So we can bring this value 100 liter per second and 212.4 cubic feet per minute. Okay, these are the value that we want to be shown to the retailer. So just tell them that we want HEPA, H13, and also the CADR value. So this is the way we calculate. Some recommendation on how do we calculate the CADR value based on the SOP that we have put up. In some cases, the CADR of the air cleaner is also being mentioned in cubic feet per minute. So that is just a conversion, 360 in cubic meter per hour. In some cases, it also being specified in cubic meter per minute. So it can be converted by just dividing this with 60. In 1 hour, we have 60 minutes. Divided by 60, we have cubic feet per minute. Okay, so next step is go to the air cleaner retailer, purchase the air cleaner with this value in hand. So bring that value, and remember that we need HEPA filter. Tell them that we want HEPA filter H13 or HEPA filter that can actually filter out 99.97% of 0.3 micron particulates. Okay. So if you have this volume, if you have this value of CADR, most of the time the seller will be able to assist us in terms of finding the portable air cleaner. Okay, some notes that if one for big room, for bigger space, for bigger floor area, we might not be able to use only one air cleaner. For example, if the room require 2000 CFM of air cleaner, we can actually use combination of 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on to make up the total of 2000. For example, we can use 2 number of 2000, 4 number of 500, or we can use 1 unit 1000 and plus another 2 unit of 500 and so on. So any combination, as long it can make the total up of CADR required for that room. Okay, that is for air cleaner. And then the next part is that this is also applied for supply fresh air supply fan. The next part is basically exhaust fan can also be applied to supply fresh air supply fan, where the purpose of exhaust fan initially is actually to extract contaminated or used air in the space, and hence promoting air movement and air intake through openings by creating negative pressure in the space. While the air movement shall be, if we are installing an exhaust fan, we have to make sure that air movement is from a cleaner area to the less clean area. For example, if we want to install an exhaust fan, if we have a living room and a kitchen, make sure that we install the air to extract the exhaust fan from the kitchen, so that it will actually draw the air from the living room towards the kitchen. Kitchen considered as less clean in terms of the air quality as compared to the living room. So that's the idea of getting the air from clean to less clean area. Okay, common type of ventilating or exhaust fan that we commonly see. We have this wall mounted. Okay, this is a lot. We see a lot of wall mounted. Either the wall mounted with what we call grill, or with damper. This is what we call as damper. Okay, and then also we have this is louvers and dampers. And then we have ceiling mounted. Okay, normally mounted on the ceiling. You can see a lot in toilets. If you see toilets without windows and without any openings other than the door, most likely that the installation will be done through ducting system, a dedicated ducting system with ceiling mounted. And also in some installation, it is quite hard for us to go through the wall, so we can go through the glasses and windows. This is window mounted and glass mounted. Okay, some example. And also there are in large spaces, we can also see a centralized or ducted exhaust system. Normally the exhaust system comes with exhaust fan, okay, or exhaust blower here, and attached to the wall directly out. So there will be some grill, louvers or dampers here to prevent insects and so on to come into the system. And this is exhaust duct, and then normally it will be extracted to grill from exhaust grill. So extracted here, going to the blower, and then going to the to the outside environment. Okay, what are the recommended fresh air during this SARS-CoV-2 pandemic or during the COVID-19 pandemic? X-ray recommendation, it doesn't really specify how much in terms of liter per second per person, but then it recommend, if we are talking about ventilation, you still follow whatever that is specified in the X-ray 62.1. But DOSH recommend 10 liter per second, and also CDC, WHO, and other authorities, they recommend 10 liter per second per person. So how do we get this 10 liter per second per person? 10 liter per second per person is quite tricky if we send this out to the public. Maybe technical persons, they know how to size this, because in their capacity they are able to size the exhaust fan. They are able, because sizing exhaust fan is quite simple for those who are in practice, or for those who are a design engineer or maintenance engineer. Those who are in that field of practice, they can easily size the exhaust fan. But those who business owner, those who are really what we call really have to follow this SOP, but then they are not in the capacity of technical knowledge or technical capability to do this. So how do we measure this 10 liter per second per person? The answer is that we don't measure. We don't really measure 10 liter per second per person directly. So what do we do is that the 10 liter per second per person is measured. We have to do some modification, some assumption, and so on. It's measured based on the size of the exhaust fan itself. But then in the SOP, in the ventilation improvement SOP, we go by the 10 liter per second per person, which is recommended by our DOSH. And also, in order for us to simplify, the calculation for the public to use it, we have to make certain calculation on the basis that the space depending on the occupancy. The space is being calculated based on 10 liter per second per person, and also based on the default occupant density in X-ray 62.1. So we use that default occupant density, and we use 10 liter per second per person to come out with a guide, which is summarized in table 1 in the detailed guide later. So fresh air requirement for common spaces are summarized in table 1 in the guide. This is basically a guide rather than a mandatory. It is advisable that if we can install more, it is much better. Okay, how do we calculate? It's quite simple. How do we calculate the exhaust fan capacity? How do we select exhaust fan? First, of course, exhaust fan in this guideline is being calculated based on the floor area. Okay, and then we refer to the requirement of fresh air requirement in table 1. And then after that, we multiply by the rate with the floor area, and then we specify the value to the exhaust fan supplier or retailer. Similar to the air cleaner, we can use more than one exhaust fan if one exhaust fan is not sufficient to make up the total volume required. Okay, let us look into the detailed step-by-step guide with example. Okay, you can download that in the Google Drive. I have it readily open here. Okay, let's say we use the same room with the floor area regardless of the height, with the floor area of 4 meter and 5. With the width of 4 meter and length 5 meter. So floor area is same as 20 square meter. Okay, but then now we need, for step 2, we need to determine what is the exhaust rate per unit floor area. So per square meter, how much is the exhaust rate? So what do we do is that at the end of this document, there is table 1. So table 1 is the minimum exhaust rate liter per second per square meter. So you have to multiply this value with the floor area. So just to let you know that this table, okay, the value in this table is estimated based on the default occupant density in X-ray 62.1, and also based on the recommended ventilation rate of 10 liter per second per person. Okay, so you can see that there are various value of depending on the type of the occupancy. For example, you can see that for general retails and sales, it's only 1.5 liter per second per square meter. Barbershop is 2.5 liter per second per square meter. You can see that it is much higher for workshop, okay, because contaminants is there. Storage room is higher because of we assume that it is totally enclosed and a lot of maybe contaminants from the materials and so on. Kitchen is 3.5, cafeteria is 10 because density is higher in cafeteria and so on. Okay, more value there. Okay, let's say for example, for our example just now, we say it is a barbershop. Exhaust rate is around 2.5 liter per second per square meter. Okay, and then we multiply in step 3. We multiply this value 2.5 liter per second per square meter with the floor area. Then what we have is that minimum exhaust flow rate that we need is 2.5. Okay, 2.5 liter per second per square meter multiplied by 20 square meter, and then we get it 50 liter per second. So 50 liter per second is very, very small amount. It's about if you go to the retailer, basically for a room of this size, you just go and buy the smallest exhaust fan available. The wall-mounted smallest one can actually easily give us 170 cubic feet per meter. So we can actually convert this because most of the exhaust fan is being rated with CFM, cubic feet per meter. The specification specify in cubic feet per meter. So to convert this into cubic feet per meter, we just multiply the liter per second with 2.12. So we get it in cubic feet per meter. So what we need to do is that next is with this value, sorry, this is supposed to be 106. So we go to the retailer, tell them that we want an exhaust fan with the capacity of 106 cubic feet per meter at least. So basically, they won't be able to provide you with this because the smallest exhaust fan that you can find most likely is 170 or 200. or 150 CFM for the smallest 6 inches exhaust fan available in the market. For example, if you hold on, I can't really. Let me close this one first. Okay. For example, if I'll try to show the exhaust fan catalog later at the end of the presentation. As an example, if for a large space, it is advised to install multiple exhaust fans so that this is basically to reduce, not to say to reduce, this is basically to make sure that we can extract as much air as possible, as quickly as possible at different areas, so that the air will not actually being, entrapped in certain area if it is a large space. If one exhaust fan cannot meet the requirement, we can install multiple exhaust fan to basically meet the minimum exhaust rate. For example, okay, if we want to next, if we want to install fresh air supply fan, we can also install fresh air supply fan with the same rate as the. We can use the same calculation of the exhaust rate to size for our fresh air supply fan. Okay, and then some guide for us to install exhaust fan if possible, like Prof. Anselm mentioned just now, to avoid short circuiting. Try to not as best as possible to install the exhaust fan as far away as possible from the opening, from other opening. For example, for this case, this is a better way because it is actually a cross ventilation. The opening is in this over this side, and then the exhaust is over this side, so the air can roughly be a displacement air movement. While for this case, if we have an opening here, we can have an option to install the exhaust fan either here and somewhere here. Okay, 2 exhaust fan here. Okay, so that we have a better ventilation. This air will be cleared by this exhaust fan. The air from this area will be ventilated from this exhaust fan. But for this case, if this only one exhaust fan, they will highly likely there will be a short circuiting from opening of air here. Okay, and then remember that the earlier presentation on air movement. Okay, for configuration or for us to basically place our exhaust fan for good air movement. Okay, I think that's it from me, and I'll return back the session to Prof. Anselm. Thank you.
Thank you, Rudy.
How do I stop share, Prof? Oh, here. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So I can see a lot of questions in the chat box already. Let's go through one by one, and at one glance at all these questions, right, is mainly related to mechanical, related to mechanical engineering. So most of the question probably have to be directed to Rudy. But
okay.
Never mind. I think let's go through the question one by one. The first one is from Hazel. Asking about is split aircon with plasma ion effective and efficient to maintain clean air in the room. So I think this one Rudy have mentioned about it already. Okay. Now, the second question is related to whether the split aircon with window open and air purifier with HEPA H13 sufficient to maintain the clean air, and where is the location? So in terms of location, Rudy also have mentioned about that already just now. It is best to put near to the source of the contaminants. Okay, now in terms of HEPA H13, yes, it is capable of filtering the air, to as clean as possible. And of course, you have to calculate the room area and select the appropriate CADR of the unit in order for this air purifier to function efficiently. Okay, now maybe just one of the issue related to this. Now, is it advisable to open the window when you use the air purifier? So probably this one I can ask Rudy to answer.
Basically, the air purifier, even though if we have an air purifier inside the room, it is still advisable for us to bring in fresh air into the room itself, because air purifier, we are not really sure, even though they claim that they have HEPA filter, H13 and so on, but that is meant for filtration of air rather than providing oxygens. You know, because when we are in the room, human in the room, we generate carbon dioxide. All of us know that we generate carbon dioxide. And over time, if we keep on the window of the room closed for too long, maybe in some places we cannot really open the window. We stay in the room for maybe 1 week and so on. Sometimes we feel dizzy and so on. So that's the sign that we are lack of oxygen. So for me personally, my opinion, it doesn't really, you know, it's okay. You can actually open the window and put the air purifier inside the room, but the air purifier or air cleaner, if possible, put it deep at the place where it is far away from the window, so it will clean the dead end of the room instead of cleaning the clean air.
Yeah.
So the positioning is important lah. If it's no harm for you to open the window, you are actually encouraged to open the window, but then the positioning of the air cleaner should be deeper in the room where the air is the most dirtiest, or where the window is where the area is actually furthest away from the window and opening.
Yeah. In addition to that, also, if you look at our SOP, we do not put air purifier as a first recommendation. It is actually an additional improvement. Also, our aim is still to introduce fresh air from outside and channel the dirty air out from the room. Okay, let us look at the next question. Is related to from Grace, asking if the patient is seated next to window and back of the head facing the window, unable to change the position, can we improve the ventilation by blowing the fan towards the patient face? Now, the first question you have to ask yourself probably is what are the source of the air inside the room, right? If you have a lot of other patients inside the room, and when you blow the fan towards the patient's face, you are actually introducing the cross transmission between other patients to that particular patient. Of course, if you are talking about the patient, one patient alone in the room, and then if you face towards the window, then of course that won't happen. So the idea, I mean, if you need to set up your area, probably what I can recommend is instead of blowing the fan towards the patient face out to the window, probably you can install this exhaust fan, glass panel exhaust fan, and you close the window all the time. And the glass panel exhaust fan is above the patient's face. That would be more appropriate. Okay. Now
this one is quite challenging, Prof. The question.
Correct. So it all depends on the scenario. Okay, I hope we answer your question. Then the next one is related to okay, despite all efforts by authority, cases continue to rise. And with more sector opening, what action and suggestion do you have under the administrative control of the hierarchy of control, OH? Now, this is a difficult question to answer. All right. Now, initially we thought that this COVID-19 is transmitted through droplets, and hence we have social distancing, masking, hand hygiene, etc. Okay, and we thought that this pandemic can be stopped through our experience in the SARS outbreak last time in 2003. However, it is not happening. And when it is not happening, we know that it's through airborne, and cases continue to increase worldwide despite these droplet precautions measures in place. Okay, and now what we are trying to do to improve the ventilation in the workplace is trying to reduce the risk of transmission. I think we have to understand that it is impossible to eliminate this COVID-19 pandemic. So the most you can do is in terms of workplaces, in terms of OSH, right, is just have to maintain the current practice, add on with the ventilation, and the ultimate one is to make sure that all the workers are immunized, are vaccinated. That is the ultimate measures. Now, I will say this is the maximum that we can do already. Eventually, business have to be carried out. And like what WHO have mentioned just recently, eventually either everyone in this world is vaccinated or everyone in this world is get infected. Otherwise, this pandemic will not stop. Okay. So I hope indirectly I can answer your question related to this. Then the next one is, are there any special apps or device to guide the user to buy any specific filter or any specific for any specific room or not? I don't know about that. Probably Rudy, you can answer this question.
Basically, there are lots of apps we can actually use, but device, by meaning of device, I'm not sure what Dayang means by device, but apps, a lot of manufacturers have come out with their own apps how to size in, air filtration system, how to size in the air cleaner, even the exhaust fan. Almost all manufacturers, they have their own special apps specific for their products. So a lot we can actually find it easily, App Store, even on the website also we can actually find them easily. I think another question I can also take, how about ventilation in a workshop that have works such as grinding, welding? Is it possible to use HEPA filter in a fume for exhaust fan? Okay, about workshop, seldomly we see workshop having enclosed space. A lot of workshop are with either roller shutter. Normally it will be categorized under wide opening. So the HEPA filter that is installed in the workshop most of the time is mainly to function as local exhaust ventilation. Local exhaust ventilation is meant to ventilate the fume, dust, and so on that comes from the work locally. It doesn't mean to ventilate the whole room. So I don't see any issue in, if we have a proper LEV inside the workshop, proper local exhaust ventilation, there will be no issue in the space ventilation for the workshop itself. But what if it is a proper workshop, but if you can see that if you go to a commercial workshop, those who are running their workshop on their own, then you will see a lot of problem which they don't really install the local exhaust ventilation to make sure that the dust, the fume, those particles that come out from their work ventilated properly lah. If you see but we are not worried about the workshop that are properly managed. So basically, if there are properly LEV inside the workshop, space ventilation will be no issue. So doesn't need HEPA lah actually.
Okay.
HEPA is actually at the LEV. So.
Yeah. Okay, the next question also, I think, Rudy, you can take. It is asking about, is it recommended to use the heat recovery system to reduce the operating cost of air conditioning system? Now, for this one, the first part of the question is asking whether we recommend this thing in the SOP or not. So I want to tell you that we do not recommend this kind of cost reduction methods in the SOP, because the SOP means to be simple, straightforward, and the minimum that the business owner need to do. Okay, so of course they can opt for different methods for the to reduce the operating cost. Now, whether is a heat recovery system helpful or not, Rudy, you can answer for that.
From the professional point of view, of course we recommend heat recovery, but then in the view of the current pandemic situation, a lot of business is trying to cope up with their businesses, trying to make money and so on. It is up to the business. It is not mandatory. If they want to install it to make their system more efficient, then by all means, if they have the budget, if they have the fund, then they can go ahead for that. But additional system, particularly to actually modify or renovate or improve technically on their hatchback system, it will cost them a lot of money. So we don't really recommend a mandatory action on the modification of their system lah. That's why we put the MUF 13 portable air cleaner as optional rather than mandatory. So the mandatory part they just need to do is that they just need to do the air flushing and improve their ventilation by mean of, if you look most of the time with whatever that they already have lah, they don't have to actually put in more equipment into the system. If they want, then it is up to them. If they have the money, then it's okay. They can always go to the professional to actually do it. No problem.
Okay, the next one is from Dr. Defini. Okay, regarding the usage of some of the silver coated or metal coated filter system. Now, yes, there's evidence on the virucidal properties of these metals. Okay, you can see a lot of paper had published on that. Things like silver, copper, etc. They have virucidal effects. Okay. Now the thing is, when you have a filter material coated with this, yes, if you trap the bacteria inside the viruses inside the filter, it can kill the viruses. But even without this coating, this filter can already trap the viruses. So it is just like additional properties. But if you ask me whether it can improve the general efficiency, I don't think so, because whatever escape from the filter will still be escaped. Okay, so in order for this virucidal property to work, the viruses have to be trapped and in contact with that metal surface. Okay, so then the next question is in terms of hospital setting, putting out physical barrier, will this affect the air quality? And probably I ask Rudy to answer this one.
Okay, for in hospital setting, the moment that the hospital is being renovated or being actually do a repartitioning or being even if during the design stage, well consideration was taken care of in terms of the purpose of the room. So by right, if you provide a barrier, the barrier must also, if the man of the room is for isolation, the barrier must also isolate that aircon system totally. It shouldn't mix. So in terms of hospital setting, we really need a qualified person to go down and then assess before you do some kind of repartitioning and so on lah. But then in terms of centralized system, if we modify the barrier or partitioning of the spaces in the hospital, if you're talking about central system, yes, it will definitely be sharing, supply air and return air. So cross contamination might happen if one of the area, let's say for example, one of the area is isolation and highly infectious area is sharing with the clean area. So it is not really advisable to do that. But if that happen, then there will definitely be a cross contamination, because centralized aircon system, we have to remember it will be sharing fresh air, sharing recirculated air, and also most likely that the return air will be mixed together among all of the spaces within the same building that is sharing the air issue. If the contamination comes from the central aircon, basically adding portable air purifier might reduce, but not significantly reduce. It will because the amount of air, still a big chunk come from the ASU system, come from the aircon itself. So my advice is that before we make the repartitioning or do some kind of barrier and so on, please do consider the purpose of the room and the cross contamination lah. Because sharing aircon is very dangerous. Hospital setting, you have a technical guideline, a proper guideline issued by DOSH and also KKM. So you have to look into that whenever that you want to do some kind of modification to the hospital setting. So we can't really cover that in this SOP lah for hospital setting. That's my advice.
Yeah. Okay. Now the next question is from Grace. If there are windows available, do we still need to install exhaust fan?
Depend on the window. If the window is going into the building itself, so you really have to bring in external air. But if the window is going outside, then no need lah.
Okay. Yeah. Then there's one question from Charlene related to the our Unimas aircon system. Actually, I'm also a bit confused with some of the aircon system. Is our Unimas office, like in our faculty, is a centralized or decentralized aircon?
Okay. It really depends. From what I learned, you really have to look into your building. If you remember my tips just now, for you to identify whether the system is centralized or split, look for ASU room. If you have a room that is labeled ASU, most likely that your aircon system is centralized. If no ASU room, then you find a lot of outdoor, then it is a split unit. In Unimas, we have both system. We don't have one. We are not relying only on one central aircon.
Yeah. So to answer that question, we have to do a really detailed walkthrough survey to see whether our system is centralized or not centralized. But anyhow, whether it is a centralized or not centralized, we are still advising all the lecturer, if you are sharing the office, right, you should put on your mask. This is to reduce the source transmission. Okay. Then the next question is. Building with central aircon system is normally positive pressure tends to flow outdoor or away from the window. Opening window or door or windows while running the aircon system for flushing purposes. Does this help to bring in more fresh or clean air?
Actually, for this kind of system, the fresh air is being supplied by the AHU itself from the fresh air damper or fresh air ducting system. So the reason that we want to open the door and the window is basically to let the contaminated air, if there's any, out of the building as fast as possible. So when the rule of the air movement, if we let more air, if we let the air out, naturally the fresh air or outdoor air will come in any way lah, in any openings and so on. So I think it doesn't really be an issue there.
Yeah. If you look at our SOP, also we mentioned clearly that they should open outdoor air damper and exhaust air damper to 100% if there's any. So if there's none, then they should open the window during the flushing. So the next question is, okay, we know that COVID virus is 0.1 micron. If using the air purifier with HEPA 0.3 micron, can the air purifier filter the virus efficiency? Yes, like I mentioned to you, the mechanism of the air filter, right? When we say HEPA filter, it is specifying the filtration efficiency at 0.3 micron. The reason being the 0.3 micron is the most difficult size to filter. Now, COVID virus, if it's smaller than 0.3 micron, it can be tracked through diffusion methods, okay? Whatever more than that, it will be tracked through inertia methods. Okay, so when you say air purifier filtration efficiency 99.97 at 0.3 micron, that is already enough for the viruses, the COVID virus already. Okay, now next question is portable CO2 detector usually detect the ventilation in the room?
Okay, I think we see the question coming for CO2 detector. CO2 detector can actually gauge the room air quality, provided that it is installed correctly at the correct place and correct position. So portable CO2, we don't really recommend it because the positioning of the CO2 sensor is very, very important for us to gauge the air quality inside the room. Okay, for example, if we put the portable CO2 quite close to the occupant, quite close to us, while we are generating a lot of CO2, and then that area with potable CO2 will be having a high concentration of CO2. That's one thing. So it doesn't really indicate a correct measurement of CO2 concentration within the room itself. Okay, that is the first thing. Secondly, the use of CO2 sensor is dependent on two parameters. One parameter is the indoor CO2 concentration and the outdoor or fresh air CO2 concentration. If you look into a lot of standards, they limit the CO2 concentration for 8 hours. So under the OSH, OSH regulations or OSH standards, they limit the concentration exposure of the CO2 for 1% for 1000 ppm of the rating of 8 hours continuously. That is based on the assumption or estimation that the outdoor concentration of CO2 is at 300 ppm. And we only allow 700 ppm of concentration within the room. So total up will become 1000. If, let's say, for example, if the outdoor CO2 concentration is at 200, then 1000 should be lessened to 900. If it is only 100, then it should be lessened to. So it doesn't really. If it is being used, without a proper knowledge, it doesn't really help. It doesn't really help because single value doesn't represent the actual, air quality inside the room itself.
Yeah.
Okay. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, that should be quite clear already. Okay, now the next question is related to the person in charge that we put in the SOP. The person might not be knowledgeable in terms of this ventilation. Now, it is correct, what you have mentioned. The main reason why we put that there should be a person in charge of implementing this SOP is that this guy is mainly served as a resource person. The main purpose is for the enforcement officer. When they go to the ground, they have a person to look for. Okay, so the person might not be very knowledgeable in these things, but he should be able to point out and to bring, to guide this enforcement team to the appropriate person whenever a question is arise. Okay, so that is the main reason for us to require each institution to appoint a person in charge for these things. Okay, then the next one is from Imran. This one, I think, Rudy, you can answer. Please advise on the use of ACSU that has an ionizer or ion protection component that claim to be able to capture the fine particle.
I think this is have been answered by you earlier with the silver coating and so on. The same goes apply to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Silver coating and so on. Yeah, correct. Like I mentioned, right. If the viruses is captured by the filter and in contact with that silver, then of course virucidal effect is taking into is going in play. But if the viruses escape the filter, because we still have 0.03% chance of escaping. If they escape, of course you can't do anything. So in a way, it is actually the similar filtration efficiency. Okay, by adding a silver in that filter itself does not increase the filtration efficiency. Okay, one question from Misano. I am using single classroom. Do I need to wear mask? Okay, now a single person like in our Unimas office, most of the lecturers sit in the single room. So do you need to wear a mask? Now there are a few things we need to consider here now. Okay, wearing a mask, the main purpose is for source prevention. Okay, source control. So if you are a single person in a room, theoretically, of course, you do not need to wear a mask. But if you are going to receive students or visitors into your room, then you have to consider, say, if you are being infected and you are not wearing a mask and you are actually contaminating the surfaces in your office and air in your office. Now, if you have a visitor coming to your room, then there's a chance of this visitor being infected through indirect contact as well, even though if you wear the mask when you are talking with the visitors, okay? So in a way, you have to consider the usage of your room. If you're not going to accept any visitor, then that's fine, okay? But if you're going to accept your visitor and you're single in the room and you want to take off your mask, okay, but you have to make sure that your air is clean, probably by putting in the portable air cleaner or through air flushing, and also to clean the surfaces before you receive the visitors to your room. Okay. So the next one is asking whether we government affiliated company, can we invite you to present this same seminar? Okay, no problem. You can contact me. Okay, so we can arrange a time. Okay, now the other question, is it advisable to do an air flushing in COVID ward? Yeah, Rudy, maybe you can answer for that.
Actually, for hospital setting, there are two considerations need to be done before we can say it is okay or not. That's why our SOP doesn't cover certain, specific or specialized area. For hospital setting, we have to look into, one is the public health point of view, and only then we can look into the engineering point of view. So we really have to look into adjacent to the ward, surrounding the ward, what are there. So normally isolation ward, we don't before we release the air from isolation ward that have infectious disease, we have to treat the air first. We have to treat the exhaust air. We don't release the air just like the air at the house or shop lot and so on. So we can flush, not to say flush lah, we can release the air, but make sure that the air is properly treated. Meaning that the element of infections is no longer in the air that is released to the outside of the room lah.
Yes. Like I mentioned to you, hospital have a different guideline. Okay, you can refer to the Annex 52 of the KKM guidelines on the COVID-19 management. Inside this guideline, it is developed by KKM together with Unistim Laya Medical Center. It's very comprehensive, and it talks into it actually cover the release of air into the environment for the COVID ward and so on. So this refer to that particular guideline for hospital setting. Okay, so any more questions?
Is this webinar recorded and shared in Facebook and YouTube for watch later? Yes, you can refer to Faculty of Medicine and Health Science Facebook and YouTube. It is live, so normally if it is live, then it will be automatically recorded by Facebook and YouTube.
Yes. Okay. So do you have any more questions? Those who are lazy to type, maybe you can just open your mic. We wait for a few more minutes before we close the session. It's already about 50 minutes overshoot the allocated time from 9 to 11 actually. No questions? I can see some of the participants also leaving already. Probably I think that's all. Today is Friday. Okay, Rudy has shared the slides can be downloaded here. Okay, you all can refer to the checkbox to download the slides. Okay, so thank you everyone. I think we shall stop the session here. Rudy, you got any final words to say?
Not much. I think thank you very much for your presence today. Those who are in social med as well. We are really honored having you guys listening to our sharing session this morning. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Rudy, and thank you, everyone. I shall close the session. For those who like to contact me or Rudy, you can refer to our Unimas website to get our contact. You can just email to us at any time. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So thank you. Bye.